So this whole COVID thing kinda sucks, huh? Who would have thought? I know I always say that I'm gonna start uploading more, and then I just kinda don't. And I know there's really no way of me proving this, but I promise I was planning on putting out at least one other video last January. Just turns out that my immune system had other plans. And because my voice sounded like it was dry humping a wood chipper at the bottom of the ocean, I had to put some of those planned videos to the side for the time being. But thankfully, it turns out that there are a few plus sides to having COVID and being off work for an entire week. Besides the paid time off, of course, it gave me plenty of time to catch up on some movies that I've really been wanting to watch. And that's what this video is going to be about today. Everything I watched while I was homesick with COVID-19. And starting this binge off, we had... so this was the first movie I watched on my time off, and I think it made me even more sick. I'm not even that big of a fan of the original Zoolander, so I'm not really sure what I was expecting, but it definitely was not whatever this was. The jokes here are either just lazy cut and paste from the first movie, or with the gags that are original, they're almost always punchlined with either a cringy, out-of-touch pop culture reference that never age well.
Hashtag oops.
Or an out-of-place celebrity cameo that also never ages well. And Ben Stiller is definitely giving his all here, and he is easily the only part of the movie that I enjoyed, but I mean, no one could have saved Zoolander 2 from being the unfunny waste of time that it clearly was. So yeah, not a great start to the marathon, but thankfully I followed it up with... I was one of the 5 human beings on the planet who has never seen Spirited Away until now. And all I have to say is... how in the hell did no one tell me how good this movie was? This unanimously beloved and universally praised film that I just assumed I wouldn't like for whatever reason. Yeah, no, there's no joke there, I'm just an idiot. But seriously, Spirited Away didn't even feel like a movie, if that makes sense. You'll notice a pattern with the next few films I watched being very unconventionally told, and Spirited Away uses this unnatural way in which it tells its story by far the best out of the 3. Chihiro is such a wholesome and relatable protagonist, and all the side characters you meet along the way are so fun and unlike anything else I've ever seen in a movie. Just in general, I feel like this is such a hard film to talk about because it felt more like an otherworldly experience than an actual movie. And to all the idiots that are like me that need to compare everything to everything, this was kind of like Alice in Wonderland meets Beetlejuice, and then they both started doing crack together. With beautifully crafted animation that felt so surreal to look at, and a constantly changing score that echoes in the background of nearly every scene, I don't even know what more I can really say. I went in expecting to not feel the hype that I've heard about this film for my entire life, but instead came out having witnessed a life-changing masterpiece that I can't wait to revisit. Marcel the Shell with Shoes On was kind of the perfect movie to watch after Spirited Away. While Spirited Away was so set in its fantastical and otherworldly environment, Marcel the Shell is about as low-key as a movie can get. And because of just how pleasant and wholesome it is, you really don't even feel the whiplash you normally would from watching movies this different back to back. I love the fact that this movie takes the Paddington approach and doesn't really explain anything about its world. Like the fact that this little stop motion seashell just exists in this world and no one really acts like it's that weird at all is so refreshing to see, because I feel like most other movies would try and over-explain things to the point that they just lose their charm. Marcel actually has a lot in common with the Paddington films, and while I don't think it's nearly as good as they are, I'm happy that this super simplified style of family movies that only really focus on giving audiences a nice, enjoyable time is becoming more and more popular, because I really do love these movies, and here the star of the show is easily Marcel himself. It is actually fucking insane how much personality they are able to give to this dude. Like 15 minutes in and you know everything you need to know about him. Which is good since Marcel is pretty much the only character on screen for 90% of the film. So if he's unlikable, the whole movie's just gonna fall apart. So while I will say it's definitely not a necessary watch or anything, and I probably will never even end up seeing it again, if you just are looking for a wholesome, simple movie that anyone can enjoy, give Marcel a shot. So this was definitely the weirdest film I watched over my marathon, and I'm not really sure how to feel about it. Do you remember how I said I had a little stint of movies that were unconventional plot-wise? Well, I'm Not There takes that to a whole other level. While I did appreciate just how different of an experience it was from pretty much any other film that I've ever seen, I really didn't understand very much of, well, anything. And it wasn't in a way that made the film more intriguing, but instead just made me feel confused and dumb throughout pretty much the whole runtime. Which, I mean, maybe I am, I don't fucking know, but this movie was definitely a letdown. I like to think that I'm a pretty big Bob Dylan fan, and I'm happy that he didn't get the same old cookie cutter music biopic that every other artist tends to get, but at the same time, I don't know what about Bob Dylan really calls for anything this weird.
I've indulged in high knowledge to scan of encyclopedia, keeping constant research of our reports in news media. Kids starve in Ethiopia, and we are getting greedier. The rich are getting richer, and the needy's getting needier.
Like on paper, I love the idea of having him be portrayed by different actors at different points in his life, and everyone here does a decent to great job playing him. But the transitions and cuts between these time jumps and personality shifts, or whatever the hell they are not handled well at all in my personal opinion. I don't know, it definitely isn't bad, and the performances and cinematography make up for a lot of the issues I had with the film, but I'm not there. More like, I'm not understanding this confusing ass movie. You know, this was actually what my other January video was going to be about. Bait, also known as Bait 3D. So this COVID recap video kind of came in clutch, because after finally managing to sit through this one, I realized that I don't have much to say, and now I didn't watch this garbage movie for nothing. So Bait follows a group of people who become trapped in a semi-submerged grocery store after a freak tsunami, and of course can't make it to safety due to the man-eating great white sharks stalking the premises. And you know, for God knows what reason, I actually had high hopes for this one. I remember reading the back of the DVD when this was released and just thinking about how cool of a premise that this actually was. And I think that's why the film stuck with me for so long, because I still think this is a cool ass premise that could be extremely well executed under the right leadership. This was not the right leadership. Bait just ends up falling for all the same traps as any other shitty shark movie, to the point it becomes unwatchable in my opinion. Horrible dialogue, terrible effects, some of the worst plot decisions put to screen, blah 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 blah. Every single stereotypical issue you get with these awful straight-to-video shark movies is present here. I will admit it was nice sitting down and just turning my brain off, because at this point, besides Zoolander, which was just annoying, all the other movies that I'd watched required pretty much your full attention. And with Bait, that was very clearly not the case. But unless you're in my extremely specific, exact situation, and even then, this movie will literally never get a positive recommendation out of me. Darren Aronofsky has always been one of those directors that I consider myself to be a massive fan of, even though I really haven't seen very much of his work. So I wanted to change that during this binge, and The Wrestler was definitely one of the best movies that I've ever seen from him. It's honestly just one of the best movies I've ever seen, period. It's a surprisingly fun and entertaining time while also having Aronofsky's signature dark and serious tone. And the reason I believe this is all balanced so well here is because of Mickey Rourke's performance. The guy does a fantastic job. And you can tell just how personal this story was for Rourke given his real life history. The film also goes the non-traditional route for this type of story, and for basically the entire movie, Rourke's character is just a super nice and relatable guy. I feel like most films of this nature would have him start off as a cocky asshole or slowly go down a bad path leading to becoming a more mean and damaged character, but The Wrestler avoids all those cliches, which is an extremely welcome touch. And while yeah, he's definitely not perfect or untouchable, you can tell that he really just wants to do the right thing and make people happy, which let me tell you, he definitely achieved, because this movie was incredible. Requiem for a Dream, on the other hand, was almost the complete opposite experience. It's still a phenomenal film, and I might even like it more than The Wrestler, but I don't think I'll be watching this one ever again. Or at least not for a very, very long time. It's such a sad, bleak, and disturbing film that really makes me see just how non-Hollywood Aronofsky writes his scripts. Because there isn't even a glimpse of a happy ending here, and the characters are all in a significantly worse place than they were at the start of the film, which was already pretty bad. But as good as Aronofsky is, this movie would be nothing without its performances. And thankfully, Jared Leto was surprisingly good here. Marlon Wayans is particularly subdued, which took a second to get used to, but once I got accustomed to it, he really does prove he can be a serious actor in his own unique way. And Jennifer Connelly gives probably my favorite performance that I've ever seen from her. But easily the standout of the whole thing was Ella Burstyn as Miss Goldfarb. Holy shit. Yeah, I really don't want to give away too much of this film for all 8 of you watching that haven't seen it yet, but it really is an unforgettable movie and probably has the most anxiety-filled, edge-of-your-seat editing, pacing, and all-around storytelling that I've ever experienced for the final 30 minutes, which just makes the whole film crescendo into this depressing and bizarre look at addiction. Truly incredible. And then I watched Minions. I am one of the few people in the world who actually kinda likes the whole Despicable Me franchise. I think the first and third films are honestly pretty great and perfectly innocent, entertaining kid flicks. We don't talk about the second one. And even the first Minions movie, I don't really find it that bad. At least not as bad as everyone would have you believe it is. I don't know, it made me laugh a couple times. I'm sure if I was a kid I would have loved it, and Rise of Gru was pretty similar. It was definitely a better movie overall, and I think the addition of Gru, even if he is in a pretty minor role, is the best thing that they could have done with this sequel. But even though I don't hate this movie at all really, I just don't have very much to say about it. It's funny at times, has good animation at times, and thankfully doesn't overstay its welcome. I definitely could have picked a better movie to end my binge with, especially with said binge having animated movies like Marcel the Shell with Shoes On and fucking Spirited Away on it, but for what it's worth, I've seen much worse. And thus we conclude my COVID-19 movie watching spree. I know there wasn't an insane amount of movies here, but I was interspersing them with random episodes of Chopped and this Transformers Siege series that was honestly not very good at all. As well as about 7 million YouTube videos that by this point I have pretty much completely forgotten about. But nonetheless, give the video a like if you had a good time, I know I did, and make sure to subscribe to the channel. This time, I promise, videos will start coming out more frequently.